You started it? Did it work? Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Welcome to the Man Sports Fan Podcast. I'm your host, and my name says here Philbo Baggins. You can feel free to call me that if you want. I'm here with roster 2 guards, C. Smith 9, the D4 Spondit, and From Dog Millionaire. So happy to have roster 2 guards here. The constant will now be constant.
Glad to be back.
We're all excited about that. As Frem said at the beginning of the show, you're the one that unites us all.
He's the flame.
Glad to be back.
That's a good observation, Frem. All right, guys. Before we get into sports, what is the movie that you find yourself quoting the most right now, or just this is the one throughout your whole life? This is what you've quoted.
This is terrible. I feel like I'm like Get to the Chopper or something. It's like, yeah, I'm like Arnold. That's like plays in my head. I don't know why. That's all I got. That's what I got.
So you quote Predator most often?
It's like a great non-answer there.
That's so good.
Yeah. So for me, like middle school through high school, it was Anchorman. It was a staple. But then it quickly transitioned to Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and that's still at the top of the list. And I don't know if it'll ever be changed. So amazing movie. Still watch it as much as I can.
You know that's not really the name of the movie. It's Forgetting Brandon Marshall.
Oh,
come on.
That won me a championship. So I will forever be indebted.
So I realized the other day when I don't know if you guys listen to the Rewatchables at all. One of the Ringer podcasts that they put out highlighting a movie a week and deep diving into it. And I did not realize until I was listening to the Dodgeball True Underdog Story episode the other day, just how often I quote that movie throughout everyday life. And it's probably not in my top 10 comedies of all time, yet it is endlessly quotable. I mean, Ouchtown Population U, bro. I'm white, WHITE. I say that stuff all the time, like way too much. So
I find myself quoting that movie a lot too, and I do think it's up there for me, like top 10 of comedies. But I do. That's funny you say that because that is something even for me that I quote. It's not the one that I watch the most, or
right.
That's my favorite or anything.
Donde está la biblioteca, Pedro?
Okay. By the way, Maddie, you are so close to the camera.
Right.
Actually, I'm really glad where you're at.
Apologies.
Pretty awesome.
Dude, we should probably all go true stash, one episode. And for the people listening,
November.
It won't mean anything. But if you
No
watch,
Shave November, Man Sports Fan Edition.
So I have no doubt that Phil and Brian could grow a mustache, but Chris,
it can be done.
I have some doubts.
It can be done.
You've just never seen it or experienced it.
Already.
I mean, it feels like a bet.
It does.
Well, speaking of glorious mustaches, the movie I seem to quote the most or throughout my life is Super Troopers. And it's not even like close. I think the longevity of the quotes. I think that's like what it is for me. So, before we get into football, because that's really what we should talk about here, I want to give some honorable mentions. The Milwaukee Brewers took the Central today. I don't want to clap for it, but Frem, roster 2 guards, how does that feel?
It just feels amazing. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I think people doubt us year after year, and here we are. So pretty awesome.
I think it was great that both of the Cubs fans picked the Cubs to win once again in the preseason, and once again the Cubs did not win, which is just glorious. It makes me so happy.
I want to tell you that Frem also picked the Cubs.
He did.
I was gonna try to not mention that.
I
But...
choose to ignore that.
Yeah, we were unanimous.
Yeah.
Classic pessimistic.
I guess you played badly for 2 months in the baseball season. That could affect you in your standing.
Weird.
That's a thing. All right, let's move past that. I'm done with that. Next honorable mention, Ohtani. He's at 48 home runs. He's at 49 stolen bases. Probably have 11, 12 games left, something like that. Does he get to 50-50?
Absolutely. It's Ohtani. It's the Dodgers. That lineup's amazing. They're going to roll him out there to get it. So, yeah.
Yeah, 10 games left. They have a series at Colorado to end the season. So to me, like, pencil it in. First player ever to go 50-50. Let's go.
Wow. Who was the last one to go 40-40? Does anybody know?
Griffey?
Carl Crawford? Griffey?
I don't know. My
Did
mind
Carl Crawford ever go 40-40?
My mind goes back to Alfonso Soriano.
He went 30-30 for sure. Did he go 40-40?
I think he went 40-40. No.
Yeah, we're gonna
look it up now.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking it up right now too.
Info on that.
Well, Acuna is the only guy to go 40-40 with Ohtani. That's active.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy that he's going to go 50-50 and they're not paying him any money this year. So
backload that contract,
Dodgers,
man. That's an insane contract.
Let's backload it till after he's done playing. Purely.
As long as he stays alive, he's good, man.
I'm still mad about that. I guess the Bobby Bonilla day for Shohei Ohtani, but every day for the same. He'll make that daily for 15 years or whatever. So, all right, let's move to football. A lot to talk about. We first want to talk though about our fantasy football draft, the Curb Your Seinfeld fantasy draft. Chris, just talk about the rules and rosters. And I mean, we've been doing this league for what, 13, 14 years now?
More than that. So the league officially, so it started in 2007, but I claim 2008 as the first year because I'm the only original member of the 2007 draft. So how the league's set up, we have an 18-man team. It's a super flex league. So you can start 2 QBs if you want to. It's also an IDP league. So we start a defensive lineman, linebacker, and defensive back. We also start a tight end. We do not start a kicker, which ban the kicker for anyone in a league with kickers. Ban the kicker. And we do not start team defenses. So we do individual players. So I believe it's 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, and 3 flexes, one of them being a super flex. So quarterbacks go fast in the draft. The other piece of this league is it's a keeper league, but it's really limited in keepers. So you can keep 1 player from your roster the year before, but it can't be a player that was drafted in the first round the year before. And then you can also keep a rookie if you drafted them and they never left your roster. So you never dropped them, you didn't trade them. So if I drafted last year and took, Anthony Richardson, and he was on my roster all year, I can keep him as my rookie. So I could potentially keep 2 players. And on top of that, we do a rookie draft. So you can draft 2 new rookies if you'd like each year as well. So a lot of kind of nuances to the league, but it's a ton of fun. And this year we tried implementing trading draft picks. So a couple of us on this call had no first round picks, and we nixed that after 1 year because it just did not lead to competitive balance in the league.
Yeah, we're going to feel that this year. All right, let's have each person here share what you think your best pick was, your worst pick, and then your season prediction. Fred, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so happy to say best pick, J.K. Dobbins. Love what the LA Chargers are doing right now. They're pounding, get that word right, the ball left and right now. Makes sense looking at Harbaugh's system from Michigan, so loving that pick right now. Worst pick, Scary Terry, Washington. I don't know if Jaden is going to get Terry McLaurin the ball this year. It's a great, solid fantasy receiver, kind of something like the 4th or 5th round. But just, low confidence right now he's going to turn out. And then you want my prediction for how I'm going to do this season. I think I'm going to go top 5. I'm going to give myself that. I don't if I get 3rd place, I'll be happy. But don't think I have a championship team, but I think I can get top 5.
Yeah, so 2 weeks in, so I didn't have a first round pick, and I kept A.J. Brown, who I ultimately traded for Puka Nacua. That was disappointing. So many levels. But for not having a first round pick, my first 6 picks were Derrick Henry, Devonta Smith, Rashee Rice, Geno Smith, not great, and then Ramondre Stevenson and Roquan Smith. So actually, it's been off to a really good start, all things considered. I think my best pick was Rashee Rice in round 4. I think he's going to be my keeper next year, and I think he's just an absolute stud. I don't love the Geno Smith pick, but there wasn't really a lot of QBs left on the board, so I kind of had to pull the trigger. And I ended up with David Njoku at tight end, who I cut because he got hurt. I just picked him back up, but I just don't like him. The tight end's just not playing out well so far this year. So I actually surprisingly like my team. We do a 22-game schedule, no playoffs. You play everybody twice. I'm going to put myself at 12-10, finishing 4th place, right out of the money.
Yeah, it's not looking good through the first 2 weeks for me. I think my all-play record right now is 2-20, so worse in the league. I've had the second most points scored against me in the league. Go figure. Again. And I'm already pretty injured. Pacheco's out. Deebo Samuel's out. Evan Ingram was a late second scratch last week, so he's out. And yeah, it hasn't been good. My rookie pick, Caleb Williams, is not looking too good right now, especially when you compare him to Jaden Daniels, who I still think is going to get injured at some point this season. It just seems like an inevitability. But yeah, it hasn't been great so far. So I'd probably say it seems like my worst pick right now is probably Caleb Williams in the rookie draft. I'm nervous after the first 2 weeks. However, he has been, I think he was pressured on 36 out of 37 dropbacks on Sunday against the Texans. So that might explain a little bit of his issues to start the season. As far as my best pick goes, I'm thinking that taking James Conner in the 5th round was probably a pretty good idea for me, because he always seems to put up points, and he always seems to get undervalued and underdrafted because his name is James Conner, and he's really, really boring. He doesn't have a cool name. He isn't flashy, isn't sexy. He just keeps putting up points year after year. Yeah.
I think some people remember his 3rd season for the Steelers where he was just pretty bad. I honestly think people hold that against him still, and it's kind of stupid.
I don't know. To be honest. As far as a prediction goes for my season, I'm very nervous that I'm going to finish dead last. I'm very, very nervous right now. So
I mean, me and you, Matt, it's probably race for the bottom.
Second to last.
It's race for the bottom. I mean, yeah, I'm also going to finish in the bottom 3 to 4. It's almost guaranteed. I didn't have a 1st-round pick. It hasn't gone well this year. Best pick is probably Aiden Hutchinson, which has been awesome. Chris was also upset when I took him, understandably.
You know why?
That makes it even better. And then my worst pick is got to be Will Levis, and it's not even close.
Not Bryce Young?
Well, Bryce Young maybe, but that was what, second to last pick or something?
That's fair.
Yeah, so I put some stock in Levis, and that has not worked out well.
Why do you call him Levi's? Curious.
It just came to me from the draft. Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Everybody said Will Levis.
So we use this draft software, and when Phil drafted him, it just said Will Levis. It's so good. I love it.
It's awesome.
I'll be real, Phil. I actually think you have the worst team in the league. I'm gonna just be real with you, man. I love you, but yeah.
You would say that. Here's what I'll say. I mean, you don't like Chris Olave though, so that's you have some bias.
I do have bias there.
Or Calvin Ridley. I mean, Calvin Ridley put up 24 for me last week.
He did. He won't do that.
It's actually Sam Laporta, who we'll talk about in a second here, that's killing me the most. So,
can we point out after 2 weeks, Matt Smith is 2-1 because we had a doubleheader. His all-play record is 21-1. That's brutal. That one is a loss.
Good to point out that is it 7 people in our league are 7-1 right now, or 2-1? 7 people. So.
Yeah.
How many of those people had 2 first-round picks?
It's good question.
It's a good question. I also want to point out before
one of them, because I know he did. and he
I
probably had my favorite team.
I also want to point out before we move on, so we also do a survivor pool within the league, and 8 of our
gosh.
12 people are out. So we get two wrong picks in the survivor pool, and 8 of the 12 people are out after
terrible.
2 weeks.
The Raiders beat the Ravens. I can't.
Baltimore, man, they blew it.
Come on. What do you
Oh.
That
do?
was so bad. That was so bad. Yeah, I
It
mean,
blew.
that's the thing. I don't know about you guys. Like, that's where I put my stock in the league. I rarely win the league. I rarely get top 3 or 4. It's like Survivor and League Pool. That's all I care about almost sometimes. 2 or 3 weeks in. Yes, I have won the league once.
Once?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
I
you're off to a
traded
hot
Alvin-
start in the confidence, so I'm proud of you.
Thank you. That's where my focus will be this year. So, all right. Let's move on from our draft to kind of just overall fantasy stuff and fantasy thoughts. We did this about a week and a half ago. It was after week 1, where we listed our top 5 fantasy busts. I think we're just going to kind of label our top 3, where we could pick 3 of them if you want to. And let's just do this. Let's pick the 3. And then pick the one that you feel the most confident about. And if that's number 1, awesome. And if that's changed after 2 weeks, totally fine. So, we'll start with you. Who are your top 3 fantasy busts? And who are you feeling good about so far?
Should I just look at your roster, or should I pick my 3 here?
Uh,
I
too
had
soon.
I had
Too
to.
soon.
Set it up. Tank Dell, Chris Olave, Travis Kelce. It's a volume issue, I think, for all 3 of these guys. The one I'm the most confident in, I'll spare you. We'll talk about Olave. Although I do think you have this guy on your roster, Tank Dell. I think it's a total volume issue in Houston for him. He has 4 catches on the year right now. It's not looking good for him, and just I think there's a bad situation. Diggs is going to get touchdowns. You see right now, Nico's going to get the share of the targets there. And I think they just have too many pieces there. Good receiver. I think if somebody goes down, I can definitely see him stepping up. But right now, I just think talented receiver. But just unfortunately, there's too many mouths to feed on the team right now. So Tank Dell I have is probably the biggest fantasy bust right now out of the busts I have.
Yeah, so for me, my top 3 were Sam Laporta, Travis Etienne, and Jamar Chase. And I will say Travis Etienne is going to be the biggest bust of the group. The reason he was being drafted so high to begin with is because he was going to be a workhorse. And through 2 weeks, he's not really getting the volume we thought he would. He's had 12 carries and 13 carries, but his efficiency's low, 3.8 yards per carry. He's lost a fumble already. Tank Bigsby looks interesting. Like, I don't think he's great, but he's going to be annoying enough to get on the field. I just don't think Travis Etienne is that good. Watching him enough. Like, I think there's hype around him, or has been for the last couple of years, but if you watch him play, he gets tackled behind the line of scrimmage a lot, so I'm just not feeling Travis Etienne, even if he stays healthy. Like, we might list guys that are hurt. Like, even if he stays healthy, I don't think he's going to produce RB1 or RB2 numbers by any means.
So I'm going to combine 2 guys into one here. And apologies for him, because I know you kept one of these guys, but Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are 2 of my busts this year. And they're not, I would say, the traditional busts that, when you think of fantasy busts. I just think they're being overdrafted. Robinson was 5th in Yahoo redraft ADP, while Gibbs was 14th. And in our league last year, Robinson was RB9 and Gibbs was RB10. And they're being drafted right now like they're going to be top 6 RBs. And I just don't think that they're going to finish there. Robinson looked better, I think, in week 2 against the Eagles. I'm still nervous about that Atlanta offense. With Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles injury. And he also still has Tyler Algier there. And the same with Detroit. Detroit still has David Montgomery there. And both of those guys, both of those backup RBs are capable RBs and can, snipe away a lot of carries from those guys. So I just feel like we do this sometimes where we want these guys who look really good, really fast, really talented. We want them to be really, really good. And we just kind of wish them to be really good. And that drives up their ADP and their draft stock during fantasy drafts. And usually it doesn't work out. So those two guys, I'm combining them.
Yeah, for me, I my top three here, and I'm wrong on one of them at least so far. Mark Andrews, James Cook, Anthony Richardson. James Cook, it kind of makes sense where, I thought he would be a bust. I just thought last year he looked inconsistent. They're giving it to other guys. I knew their receivers were lacking this year, but I thought, I don't know if he's actually going to take the step. Had a great game against Miami last week. I could be wrong about that. It looks like Joe Brady wants to run the ball more. Things like it looks like the Bills are going to be better because of that, which is cool. But Mark Andrews, Anthony Richardson, I think Mark Andrews, just the amount of, different people that could get the ball there in Baltimore. Also because he's getting older. Isaiah Likely's there. And then Anthony Richardson, we were talking about this a lot during the Packers-Colts game. Feels like he could be Josh Allen, but he's not there yet. And he just doesn't make the best decisions, doesn't have great accuracy still at times, makes those wild plays, but it's just going to be inconsistent. And I think people maybe are expecting a top 5 QB, I think, especially in terms of being a running QB. But I don't think he'll be that this year. And so, yeah, Mark Andrews is looking all right. And Anthony Richardson isn't looking too bad either. But, long season left. And Anthony Richardson has the tools. I just think he's one of those guys, kind of like Jaden Daniels, who will get injured. And that's how I actually put him kind of on this list. So I know that goes against you, friend. I think we're frenemies this podcast. So
Hey.
we'll see that through. Hey. All right, let's jump to the Fantasy League winners. And I'm going to – what I want you guys to do, just say all 5 and say the one you feel the most confident about out of those 5 to this point. And then, yeah, you could just talk about that one player, kind of similar to what we did with the bus.
Yeah, so my 5 here, I think injuries really highlight the issues with my 5 here. But I have Joe Mixon, Cooper Kupp, Derrick Henry, going against Maddie here with Bijan Robinson, and then going against Phil with Anthony Richardson as my league winners. I do think Richardson gets it together, but I'm going to highlight Bijan. I'm going to go against Maddie here. I think if you've seen how this offense is operated from Atlanta, it is a stark difference from last year. Bijan is getting carries. He's the centerpiece of this offense. I think they're just going to get better. We've talked about how it takes maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks now in today's NFL to even get your chemistry, your timing going right now. There's something like 65 touchdowns, passing touchdowns league-wide right now. It's all-time low here in the last 5 or so years. So I think you just see league-wide right now, points are not being scored. I think once Atlanta gets their offense clicking, I think Bijan is going to rack up fantasy points, and I think he definitely is going to be that guy and definitely worth where people drafted him. So more to come there. But yeah, I think Bijan is definitely going to flourish in this new offense.
Yeah, interesting stat for you guys. So through 2 weeks, so 32 games, 64 teams, how many 300-yard passers have there been?
3.
2. 4.
Yeah, it's 5. Like, that's it. I mean, 300-yard passing games used to be, like, the norm. So I know it's 2 weeks, it's early. We talked about, like, preseason doesn't happen as much, but just kind of an interesting thing to pay attention to this year. My 5 were Kenneth Walker, already hurt. Deebo Samuel, already hurt. But then I went receivers, Tyreek Hill, it feels like low-hanging fruit. Justin Jefferson, who was going later in drafts as we got close to the end of the season, or draft season. In fact, in some leagues was going in round 2, which we all look stupid. He should have been a top 3 or 4 pick. But my number 1 is Rashee Rice. Kind of talked about him earlier. I think if it wasn't for the off the field stuff that happened this year, he would have been a second, like late second, early third round pick. And through 2 weeks, he looks like he's Patrick Mahomes' guy. I think he's going to be on average like 80 to 90 yards a week, scoring touchdown probably in at least half of them. Like I could see him realistically going for like 1,300 yards and 8 or 9 touchdowns. So I think he's going to be like at this time next year, locked in as like a late first, early second round pick. He said if it wasn't for the offseason stuff, he just kind of flew under the radar. I think I got him in 3 of the 4 leagues I'm in, and he's just a beast. He's got the best quarterback in the league throwing him the ball, with other receivers around him that can't stay healthy. So I'm going to go Rashee Rice. I think he just continues to go off this year. It's only year 2 for him. So the sky's the limit. He could be the new Tyreek in terms of like numbers that he can put up in a high profile offense. So yeah, he's going to be fun to watch. I hope people drafted him.
I honestly think with Rashee, it was like, and I felt this, like, oh, he went through that crash. He's like mentally not going to be there as much, or he's going to get suspended. I think that was kind of the thought. And yeah, but if you did the research, you realize, oh yeah, like the trial's not till, or any of this isn't till after the season practically. So it's like, yeah, so good on you to do the research, because I think you got a steal there for sure.
It kind of just kind of depressed his ADP, like in redraft leagues. So everybody was taking him way later than they should have because everybody thought he was going to get suspended. So
yeah,
it wasn't until probably like a little bit later on in the draft season that people were starting to realize that, oh, hey, he's actually not going to get suspended. So they started taking him a little bit earlier. So his ADP started to rise a little bit, but still a steal getting him in the 6th or 7th round,
Yeah, I think his ADP closed at like 67.
Yeah, and it was
crazy.
Above 70 for a while. Yeah. I don't think really anything that I have going right now is working for me as far as who I love this year.
Love that.
I was really in on Josh Palmer, the Chargers wide receiver, and he's been injured, and Justin Herbert is only throwing for 140 yards a game. So, that one's kind of TBD at this point. I just liked him as like a late round flyer. I still think the Cowboys are going to be good. So Dak Prescott was my number 4 guy. He was QB3 last year in our league, and he was going behind Mahomes and Lamar and a whole bunch of guys that he outscored last year. So I still think that the Cowboys are going to be good, and I still think that situation is going to be fine, but it hasn't looked good so far. And then David Montgomery still outscoring Jahmyr Gibbs right now. So that seems like a good one, especially for a guy who was being taken 40 picks after Jahmyr Gibbs in drafts. And right now my top 2 guys are injured. So Raheem Mostert, who I loved in the pre-draft process because I didn't think that a whole lot was going to change from last year. And unfortunately, he got injured in week 1, so he hasn't played, and Achane has looked fantastic. I'm still worried about Achane getting injured. He was on, I think he was number 2 on my bust list. Still worried about that. But my number 1, and I was so jealous that Frem got Cooper Kupp in the 3rd round in our league. I thought he was going to finish as a top 5 wide receiver. Currently injured right now. I don't know what his status is for week 3, but I just kind of thought he had the season from hell last year. And going into the season, Puka was already injured going into the season, so there was that concern there. And lo and behold, Puka gets injured in week 1. And Kupp was great in the final 6 weeks of the season when he got healthy last year. He's 2 years removed from winning the Triple Crown for wide receivers. If he's healthy, he's still going to be like probably a top 15 wideout in fantasy drafts or, in fantasy football. It's just all kind of depends on that health right now. What happened to that ankle. So we'll see.
Yeah, for me, Josh Jacobs, Alvin Kamara, Nico Collins, those 3 are hitting. Tua was my number 2. He got hurt. But 2 is 2. The concussion stuff is sad. I hope that is actually resolved and he's all right. And then Josh Allen is my number 1, and that's definitely low hanging fruit for sure. But yeah, feeling pretty good about those 4, 5.
I was about to say, really going out on a limb there, Phil, with Josh Allen. So,
sometimes you got to say the obvious. So
it wasn't the defensive lineman, Josh Allen, was it?
I really like that Josh Allen too. He's my 1B to 1A Josh Allen. But yeah. But yeah, Nico Collins, I think, is like one of the most fun guys to watch right now, just because him and Stroud together is like so fun. So I think that'll keep going throughout the year here. Well, cool. Good luck in your fantasy leagues, wherever you are, wherever you're listening, whatever your rules are. Good luck to you all. It's usually an emotional roller coaster. Really rooting for Tank Dell. So let's move on to the Packers versus Colts. Packers win. They beat the Colts 16-10. Before we get into it, who picked them in their confidence pool? Who picked them to win?
I think I did. I think I did.
So it might be just me, but maybe Maddie. There wasn't a lot of confidence from the pod last week.
We're going to look.
A lot of sad, pessimistic people. Chris always picks against the Packers anyway, though. So, I don't want to change much. Packers win 16-10. Super fun game to watch. Racked up the running yards first half. Everybody was getting involved. What are your guys' what's the kind of the main takeaway that you have from the game? And maybe it's a particular player, maybe it's just one side of the ball, but like what really stood out to you in what you watched?
I think this is a whole football team, which is exciting here. I think that, everyone, I was definitely in the camp of we can't win without Love, especially in this matchup. We have a run game. We proved that. We showcase that. And my hope is growing for Mr. Hafley, right? Hafley, whatever his name is. My hope is growing for our defensive coordinator. And I don't think he's even really begun. I think this is going to maybe be exciting to see, what he throws at offenses moving forward. And, just listen to some talk radio on him and just the schemes he threw at Richardson. And there was a lot of pressure on him. And I think that definitely played into how he performed. And, hope is growing for the defensive side of the ball here. Excited to see what we can do. I like our matchup here against Tennessee with Mr. Levi's. And I think it's going to be a fun matchup for us to take advantage of a young quarterback again.
Yeah, for me, the game ball goes to Matt LaFleur. I mean, that game plan was just rock solid. So I know Love got hurt on a Thursday, gave him a few extra days to prep for the Colts, but holy cow. I mean, that first half was just incredible. The way they were able to sustain drives and put no pressure on the arm of Malik Willis. Like, I just thought it was super creative. Obviously, as the game went on, the Colts started to understand what we were trying to do and slowed us down, but they were not prepared for that first half. And that's really all we needed. We got enough from our offense to where, like you talked about, our defense was good enough on that side of the ball, played really well. So, like, Matt LaFleur, he's a rock star head coach. I mean, I know, like, I've come a long way on him. I wasn't really sure at first, but holy cow, he can put a game plan together. And when you put the right personnel around him in his system, like, it works. So really excited, especially when Love comes back, to see what he's got up his sleeve.
Not to be negative Nancy over here, but the biggest thing that I was worried about headed into the season was the kicking game. And I am still not convinced, and that's still probably the thing that worries me the most about this team. Going back to, I think, week 11 of last year, Packers kickers have missed a kick in 12 of the last 14 games. Now, that includes field goals and extra points. So, not good. Narveson missed another one from beyond 40 yards. I kind of feel like they might not let him. Like, I don't feel confident with him even lining up for like a 50-yarder. So, when we actually need a field goal in a tight, one possession game, I'm not feeling confident about the Packers kicker right now, and I think it's something to monitor for the entirety of the season.
Yeah, that's interesting. The 12 of the last 14 games, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
It really is crazy. It makes you wish you still had Mason, right? It's just so dependable. Or at least clutch, if anything. Yeah, I mean, I could echo the overall team win. I think you got to give props to Malik Willis. He's been on the team for 3 weeks. And he literally went out there and he made almost every right decision. I mean, the ball even gets puked on. He's supposed to throw it. He's like, I'm not throwing this ball. So I thought that he could go out there and at least run, make some plays. But I was surprised that he didn't make really any mistakes. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if he sees the field crazy well. I'll be honest. I don't know if he's actually there yet. Also, you have all this new terminology, new plays. Maybe we wouldn't even expect that from a lot of QBs. But overall, just really, really excited about what he brought as a backup QB. And he's just a good dude. Every interview, everything that you hear about him since the game has just been super cool. So if you haven't seen any of those interviews or any of those talks, go watch it. It's cool to hear him talk about the game and kind of moving forward what's going on. What's your main concern? Do you have a main concern moving forward? What is that for you guys?
My main concern is actually down the road. I think we get through the next 2-3 weeks here with Malik. I think we'll get a win here against Tennessee, and then not super confident in the next couple weeks after that. But whenever Love does come back, I'm actually a little concerned about how this chemistry flows. Of if we're going to rely on our run game, rely on our defense. Obviously, like Maddie highlighted, not our kicking game, but I'm just curious how we transition and do we keep the same mojo and chemistry going? Obviously, with one of the best up and coming quarterbacks in Jordan Love, but just a little concerned about the chemistry and how that all goes. And if I think Love comes back 100%, I think that's the biggest question for anyone right now is when does he come back and is he going to be ready to go? And obviously we don't want to see him get re-injured here. So feeling pretty good about the next couple weeks here, but I think, just that transition point, really want to see this all come together because I think we're kind of developing as a different team right now without him. And I just want to make sure we can continue to keep that same momentum going when he comes back.
Yeah, my biggest concern is, and I feel like this is a when, not an if, but when Josh Jacobs gets hurt, who the heck is going to run the ball for the Packers? Marshawn Lloyd goes on IR. I mean, Emmanuel Wilson, you just don't have a lot of depth at the position. So Jacobs has had a lot of carries in his day. He's touched the ball a lot. So I just don't think his ability to hold up over 17 games is realistic. And I'm not sure what our plan is for next man up. So that would be my one thing I would like to see play out. But again, I'm going to trust LaFleur. Peter LaFleur.
Thank you, Lance Armstrong. Or no. What did he say? Thank you. Oh gosh, I'm losing it right now. Never mind.
It'll come to you.
Oh, it's thank you, Chuck Norris. Yes.
Chuck Norris, yeah.
I don't know, other than the kicking game right now, if I really, really have a massive concern. I'm very curious to see when Love comes back. I think a lot of what's going to happen with his return is going to hinge on whether or not they win this week. Because if they can win this week, I think they feel probably pretty comfortable sitting him for, maybe another 2 games after this because, the Vikings are, 2-0 obviously right now, and that could very, very easily be a loss, even with Love as quarterback. But after that, it's the Rams, and the Rams are decimated with injuries right now. And I feel like that could be a win. And I think that if we win this week, I don't think we see Love until after the Rams game. I think that's my prediction.
Yeah, we'll talk about Love. We'll talk about predictions. I think the last thing I just want to say is we've given up a lot of long rushing plays, a lot of them, and I think it's new scheme. You played Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor, so those are good running teams. I'm not crazy concerned, but I think you're also learning a new defensive system. There was some bad angles in tackling. I think Quay Walker didn't have his best game. You've also played a soft defense for more than a decade. And I just think there's a shift. in how you figure out a new aggressive defense. And I think, it's just going to take some time. But we played, I think, arguably two of the best potential rushing offenses in the NFL, maybe outside of San Francisco. So, I'm not crazy concerned, but we give up a lot of those plays. And, our third down percentage, I think, is 6 of 23. We've been so dominant on third down so far. And I don't know if that's sustainable. So, I think that's the thing I'm, definitely a little more concerned about. I think the kicking game, what Matty G said, made a lot of sense, too. Because Narveson is very raw. We obviously see that, right? How many of you think that Jordan Love starts this week? Does anybody think he starts this week? Just raise your hand. How many would have thought if he would start if we lost last game? How many think you would have started if we would have lost this past game?
No.
And you still say no. Okay. If he played this Sunday, that would be 17 days that he's been injured. So, it's not out of the question that he could, but I think you're right. Do they do anything different with Willis? What's the one change you maybe see?
Yeah, I think you got to let him air it out. I think we've had a text thread. I've talked to others. I think you got to let him move the ball vertically on the field a little bit more, take a few more shots. Obviously play action, things of that nature. I think you saw the big play with Dobbs downfield. I think 50-50 balls. Give him an opportunity to put the ball down the field and see what he can do. Ideally earlier in the game. Hopefully we're not in a catch-up position where he has to really drop back in a 4-5 wide set and really move us down in late game situations. I don't know if that's his strength, but right now I think building off the run, I think hopefully he can move the ball vertically for us, and we have a lot of speed and a lot of guys who can go make plays downfield. So I say see if we can get that vertical passing game going for him.
Yeah, I don't know if they can really open it up for Malik, but I would like to see the receivers on the field a little bit more. Jaden Reed only played 56% of snaps. Christian Watson 59% of snaps. I just think you need these guys on the field to at least have a threat of passing the ball. But I'm just not sure what they can do. Like I said, he's so new to the team that you have to be careful with the playbook too. And even that touchdown he threw last week, could have easily been a pick six. I don't know if you can really do much different. You just kind of got to hope you can pull another ugly game out.
I think if there's one thing I want to see, it's a couple more design run plays for him. I think we maybe saw 3 design run plays for that guy, maybe 4. Obviously I wasn't counting, but I'm just trying to, picture it from memory. I think a couple more design run plays. Dude's an incredible athlete. Let's just get him out in space and have him make people miss. So, to go off of Chris's point, 3 weeks into learning a new offense, there's only so much he's going to be able to do. And I kind of expect a little bit more of the same. Maybe they'll throw in a couple new wrinkles and a couple of new plays, but I would kind of expect more of the same against the Titans.
I'm just hoping for some early shot plays, play action, first down, second down, and you air it out. Because obviously he can throw it. It's and if Watson's gunning down the field, there's just not a lot of guys that are as fast as him. So
Agreed.
If you can get a one-on-one early,
yep.
That just feels like that's maybe what we need to do a little bit more. Okay, how many of us think we win the game?
I do.
Yep.
Okay, 1, 2. Who thinks we lose? Me and Chris. So 2-2. I just think on the road. I just think on the road. I just don't think we play as perfectly.
Tennessee will be ready for what we did last week.
Yeah. This is a revenge game for Malik, right? He just got traded from the Titans. I think if anyone has to have a chip on their shoulder and something to prove, I think it is Malik. He's top draft pick by the Tennessee, and they trade him. Hopefully there's some motivation there for him. And Tennessee has a good defense. I'll say that. I'll give them that. But that offense is a mess. And I don't think they have that figured out. And I think the Packers defense could really make some big plays.
What's the over-under on Will Levis turnovers? 2? Or are we going to start at 2 or 3? Or is it going to be 2.5 maybe?
Under.
Yeah, I think he plays better. Because I mean he's had like the back-breaking ones.
Yeah.
So I just think he eliminates that this week.
I don't think he does. I think he has at least 2. I think it might be under, but I think he has at least 2.
I'm going to say 3. I'm going to say he throws 2 picks and has a fumble. Because did you guys see what what's the name of the Titans coach, Callahan?
Brian Callahan.
What he said? Yeah, what he said to him as he was coming off the field after he tried that lateral. What the F are you doing?
Yeah, it kind of deserves that.
That's just going to be the way that this dude is, and he's going to have some good weeks, and he's going to have some really awful weeks where he makes some horrible decisions, and I feel like that's probably going to happen this week.
Will Levi's his growth area.
Levi's.
Growth mindset.
Phil, before we move on, I just based on an earlier comment you made, I just want to point out that I feel like you're starting to worry about.
I am.
Quay,
very worried about Quay. All right, let's move. Man, such a good song. If Matt Kendall's listening to this, he's happy somewhere. Do you know this song, Frem? Worried About Ray?
I don't know the reference, so I apologize.
It's by the Hoosiers. I doubt they're in your top 5 bands. We'll talk about that later.
Sorry. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
It's a good song. It's worth looking up.
I'll look it up.
All right.
Sandwich song.
All right. Let's move from the Packers to the Badgers. Badgers were at home, Camp Randall, 10 a.m. game, Fox special, and they lose to Alabama 42-10. Tyler Van Dyke gets hurt right away in the game, out for the season. In your guys' minds, what is the overall picture of the Badgers football program after a game like this? Are you worried? Is it just one game, and it's Alabama, so don't overreact? Where are you kind of at in thinking about the program or just the season?
I'd like to be Bill Belichick here and be like, we're moving on to Cincinnati, or in our case, we're moving on to USC, but we're going to, Southern California, and I do not like our chances there either. I'm really worried that our confidence just gets obliterated here in back-to-back weeks. They're not playing. They have a week off, right? They play USC next weekend. But still, I mean, maybe a week off to try to regroup and figure out what to do. Do not like our quarterback situation with Locke. I think we're really stuck here of not having a playmaker now at the quarterback position and having to hopefully rely on a run game, which we've highlighted before is not as strong as years past. You're hoping to be 500 at least. This is a pretty scary territory, I think, for Badger Nation right now. I look past USC. We should get wins against teams like Purdue and Rutgers, but this is I think Fickle's obviously safe, but I think this season is going to warm up the seat for Fickle, without a doubt. That this is going to be a pretty ugly year, I think, for Badger Nation.
Yeah, I'm super excited that I got season tickets this year. I mean, this team has really taken a huge jump from years past, let me tell you. I've thrown this word out a few times with some people this week, but I honestly never thought in my time that the Badger football program would become irrelevant. And I honestly think they are completely irrelevant right now. Obviously we're trying to turn a program around. It takes time, but in the NIL portal era, it doesn't have to take that much time. We're not able to throw the money that other schools are. I mean, I was just looking at it, right? Like this year, the schedule's brutal. I don't know where we end up, but it's not going to be great. Last year, we're 7-6, 2022, 7-6, 2021, 9-4. Bowls those years: Reliant Quest Bowl, Guaranteed Rate Bowl, Las Vegas Bowl, Duke's Mayo Bowl. I mean, we are literally Minnesota, Rutgers, Purdue. We're in that territory right now, and the Big Ten got really good with these 4 new additions. So I'm not overreacting to a loss to Alabama, but we didn't belong on the same field as them. Even if Tyler Van Dyke was healthy, we are a program sort of in the middle right now. And obviously the Longo experiment is not working. Mike Tressel can't get pressured on the ball or on the quarterback at all. Like there's a lot of red flags. I trust in Fickle, but This program is far from being any sort of a contender, and it's disappointing. As like all of us, we've always seen them be good in our lifetime. So we're not used to this, and it's consecutive now. So it's definitely a concern.
Yeah, they're just not good enough to hang with SEC teams anymore. I apologize. I didn't watch all of the game. I was playing cards with my wife's 98-year-old grandma.
Hope you beat her.
Shout out Marie Kubitschek. And yeah, I feel like I avoided probably the stress that comes with realizing that your team is just not good enough anymore to hang with these teams. Like I remember in the mid 2000s when we would beat SEC teams in bowl games, beat Arkansas with Darren McFadden and Felix Jones, and beat an Auburn team, on a New Year's Day bowl. And gosh, that seems like such a distant memory because they're just they're not fast enough on offense right now to be able to actually score points against these teams. So it could have been worse, honestly. It could have been 59-0 against Ohio State a couple years ago in the Big Ten championship. So at least it seemed like they were in it through the second quarter, and then that late touchdown to put Alabama up 21-3 pretty much sealed the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this in the text thread. You bring in Fickell because you want to innovate the offense in particular. I think that's the big thing. Leonard had the defense on lock. You bring in Fickell because it's a program move. You want to innovate the offense. You want to make it a more modern offense. And I think the reality is everybody has this offense now. So you're not actually doing anything different. So can you make it elite? Can you make it like Ohio State or a USC or obviously Alabama? Like, can you get to that level? And I actually don't think we actually thought through the ramifications of all that for Wisconsin NIL, like you said, Chris. I actually don't know if you can. And at least what you had with the power style offense, or even more of a pro style offense, is it was different, and teams had to really plan for it, and they didn't really know how to plan for it that well. And we just were O-line you and running back you. Yep. In essence, it looks like you've lost that, at least seemingly. And again, it's pretty early here, so I don't want to be too kind of way overreact. But was it wishful thinking, or were we just thinking, hey, we want to try to beat Ohio State and we don't think we can do it with the offense we had? And I think that was kind of the thought. Like, we can't beat Ohio State with this, more old school pro style offense that might translate to the NFL, but in college doesn't work as well.
But it's not too early when you consider there's been zero improvement from year one to year two. I mean, there's no sign of improvement on either side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. You're not wrong, Phil. I mean, they used to have an identity, and this feels like a team that doesn't have an identity right now.
There's no identity.
Yeah.
I'm totally with you, Phil, and it is so hard because I would have said, a few years ago, like we do need to switch to maybe a spread offense because we're just not quite good enough. But I think a lot of us Badger fans would probably wind this back a few years and take that, more competitive Badger team right now. I think that was like in games. We're more like an Iowa, right? We'd play really good on defense, or we'd be in games. We could at least play with Ohio State in the same field. We'd make the game competitive. Or Michigan, we may still lose, but it'll be close. I think we'd take that right now because this team could be really embarrassing this year. And I think I'm with you, Maddie. Like, it's kind of like denial. You're like, do I want to watch this game? It's right. It's just ugly. And we don't belong on the field, and this is going to be rough with this new Big Ten this year.
Do we have any positive takeaways?
Yeah, Will Pauling is a stud. He's so good.
Yeah, I think we have some individual players that can stick out in defense and offense, but yeah, other than that, I'm sorry, I don't have a lot.
This is a national title team we did just play too. I think we have to you want to pump the brakes a little. How we go out to USC and play, that'll be interesting. Can't be any lower as a program, it feels like.
I think it might be. I hope we at least keep it like I said, a couple scores. I think it could be a really ugly matchup for us.
All right, let's move away from college football. We're all depressed. Got some positives in there though. It was good. Let's go back to the NFL. We're only 2 weeks in, coming on week 3. Which team has the must-ish win? It's hard to say, like, you have to win this game or else you're screwed. But, because we have 17 games to play. So it used to be 16. 0-2, I think, with 16 games used to feel a lot worse. 0-2 now, it still is not good, but still feels like it can climb out a little bit more, even with that extra game. So in your guys' mind, who has the must-ish win game this next week?
Yeah, this is pretty fun. I think Maddie and I have opposing teams here of who needs to win in week 3, playing each other. But with the big contract Dak just signed, McCarthy's contract is totally up in the air right now. I think Dallas needs a win. In Jerry's world, there's so much pressure to win. And I think going 1-2, I think would be a really big disappointment for this franchise right now. Every year, there's so much hype on them, making the Super Bowl, returning to glory. And I think, after week 1 coming out is like, okay, like Micah Parsons looks amazing. Dak looks really good. They got CD, everything. Now CD's injured, potentially going into this game. Tough game, I believe. Ravens, if I'm correct there. But yeah, I think Dallas needs this because I think, getting down 1-2, I think is just gonna be a really, really big morale piece in headlines and for Dallas, who gets a lot of national spotlights. So that's what I have as my mustish win team.
Yeah, I'm going Jacksonville. I think we're what, year 4? Is this year 4 of Trevor Lawrence? And like, are we still sure? Like, is he a great quarterback? Is he even a good quarterback? Like, do we even know? He's been through a lot of schemes and systems, but he just does not look the part recently. And the reason I say they need to win, they're at Buffalo. That's a really tough game. But their stretch of games until their bye is at Buffalo, at Houston, versus Indy, they probably win that. At Chicago, toss-up. Versus New England, probably win that. But then it's Green Bay, Philly, Minnesota, Detroit. I mean, if they fall in too deep of a hole, they're not getting out, and they're not making the playoffs. And although it's a really bad division, like 9-8 or 8-9 could win that division. Well, maybe not with Houston, but I don't think this is a playoff team if they lose the next 2. So Jacksonville is in a must-win. They got to win one of the next 2 against 2 pretty darn good teams.
The same thing is facing the Baltimore Ravens right now. They go up against the Cowboys on the road this week. Then they have the Bills at home and the Bengals on the road. And I mean, 0-5 is a real possibility for them. And right now, I mean, their chances aren't great. 0-2 teams since 1990 have like an 11% chance of making the playoffs. You go 0-3 since 1990, only 4 teams have ever made the playoffs after going 0-3 to start the season. So obviously, yeah, extra game, but you really, really don't want to lose this one against the Cowboys because history says that there's really not that much coming back from it. So.
Yeah. For me, it's the Colts. We got to see them up close and personal this past week. Yeah, they have the Bears at home, and it just feels like where the Bears are at offensively, they're not great. This is the game you have to win because then afterward you play Pittsburgh at home, you go at Jacksonville, at Tennessee, Miami at home, at Houston, at Minnesota, Buffalo at home. So it's just not looking great. And it's not that you can't win some of those games, but there's none you look at and say, you're easy going to win this game. Miami, I mean, when they come October 20th, Tua could be back. Maybe he's not at that point. But yeah, you could easily go, if you lose this game, you could easily, like, a lot of these teams go 0-4, 0-5. So this feels like for the Colts, who have looked like a borderline playoff team, right? Some people think Richardson could take the jump. If you have all your weapons out there, Pittman and Jonathan Taylor, with that offensive line, this should be a better team. And starting 0-2 with what's coming up, it just feels like this is the game we have to win against the Bears. Has there been a team that has been surprising to you? You just did not expect them to be good? Talk about that.
I made it pretty obvious in previous pods. I was not about the LA Chargers, but like I highlighted with J.K. Dobbins, I'm going to start to have to believe in Jim Harbaugh. And I don't really want to, but he has a formula. He's built a culture in the college game. I think people forget he built a culture, right, with the San Francisco 49ers. He's been to a Super Bowl before. This is nothing new for him. And, as a former NFL quarterback, he gets the NFL culture. Kudos to him for transitioning probably at an opportune time, going out to LA. I think he actually could make Justin Herbert's career look like something here. And not because he's going to make Justin Herbert win all the games, but because of the system and the culture he's building around him right now. And I think this is going to be a run first team. And they have, I think, a really solid defense as well. So this is going to be a force. They're going to be a force to be reckon with in the AFC, which I don't think people saw this coming. I don't think people saw AFC West, race that'd be meaningful there with the Chiefs. But the Chargers look tough right now. And I think that, with controlling the ball on the ground, I think it's going to be a tricky team to play. Grinding the clock up, time of possession here, not making Justin Herbert have to win the game just with his arm. And I think hopefully for him, that'll take pressure off of him and allow him to even be more successful. So yeah, really interesting turn of events. I didn't see this coming, but I probably should have, in all honesty. So LA Chargers.
Yeah, for me, it's the Tampa Bay Bucks. I mean, they won week 1 against Washington, 37-20. I mean, they played well. But then going to Detroit and beating the Chris Smith, the Super Bowl champion for 2025, that's impressive to go into that stadium and win. And this is a team I just wasn't sure. I don't know if any of us were really sure, was last year for real? Is Baker Mayfield going to continue to be an above average NFL QB? And I think the answer is yes. I think schematically, they've built a system around him. He's got nice weapons. Chris Godwin looks like he's lost 2 years. He looks more like he's back in his prime again. And Mike Evans is the safest receiver in NFL history in terms of putting up 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. So I just like what they got going. They got a nice defense, and they're good. They're a team I think will be back in the playoffs, and a team you don't want to play when you get to the playoffs. So impressive start, and I think they have a couple more wins. We got that Denver at home this week, so I think they start 3-0, and then you never know from there.
I guess if you had on your bingo card that the New Orleans Saints were going to score the 4th most points by any team through 2 games in NFL history, then you are winning a lot of money right now. They have 91 points so far. Their over-under wins was 7.5, and I'm pretty sure that I picked the under, and that seems like a very, very big mistake right now. Because, man, they have looked good through 2 weeks. Yes, obviously, Carolina in week 1, they are a hot garbage of a mess right now. But beating the crap out of Dallas on the road in week 2 and scoring on their first 6 drives, scoring touchdowns on the first 6 drives, that's pretty impressive. So somehow Derek Carr had 11 completions, only 11 completions last week, and they put up 44 points on the Cowboys. So I think that's my biggest surprise by far, without a doubt.
Yeah. You got to pay attention to coordinators. Another one, Clint Kubiak. I think just dudes figured out the secret sauce of that team, and Alvin Kamara is once again fantasy relevant. So a great call, Maddie. That's impressive.
Well, and Derek Carr was not drafted in our league, and I mean, it feels like people in fantasy do this. We just give up on a player who actually has a decent track record, and it's just funny that we do that.
I did pick him up before week 1, though. I'm happy I did.
He had more 300-yard passing games last year than Patrick Mahomes. He had 6 300-yard passing games. I'm pretty sure Mahomes had 4.
It's crazy.
But not to Chris Olave for you, Phil.
I believe.
Can't win them all.
Yeah, it's true. Rashid Shaheed. Let's just shout out Rashid Shaheed because that guy's awesome.
Great name. That's going to be a great draft jersey someday.
Absolutely.
For me, it is I call them the Queens, but the Minnesota Vikings, who are 2-0, beat up on the Giants, who are not a good team, but they still go on the road and beat them up really handedly in New York. And then San Francisco comes into town, and they were the better team. And that's not easy to say against San Francisco. Sam Darnold might look like the next Baker Mayfield in terms of a reclamation project that could be actually decent in the league. And Kevin O'Connell is just a good coach. I think like that just shows that guy gets his teams ready to play and has good plan. And yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate to say, but Minnesota's looked all right and are currently leading the division at 2-0. So it's early. They'll sputter. But to be honest, I did not. Yeah, I mean, and just to go 2-0. I mean, I think a lot of people have picked this team to be last in the division. The one team that didn't have any playoff chance. And that's like, okay, like maybe they could get to 9-8. Like that is pretty possible. And this is why the NFL is so good, guys. We're 8 of the 12 are out of Survivor already because you just don't know what's going to happen. That's beautiful. All right, well, that's all the sports we have for you. A lot of football. Going to continue to have a lot of football in the coming weeks here. But now we're to our top 5. This is sponsored by the DeForest Public High School system.
Wow.
This is we decided to go top 5 bands or artists of all time. I want you to just give your list of the 5 and then talk about one of them. So give your list of the 5, talk about one of them. That could be your number 1, or it could be your number 5, because nobody heard of them or something, so go down the list, pick one to focus on. Friend, we'll start with you.
So my disclaimer, I a bit of an error in how I looked at this. I saw bands. Maybe I thought it had to be a band versus an artist. So that's how I built my list. So maybe my flaw there. I could have picked more solo artists.
Do you want to change? Should we move it on and you kind of?
I'm gonna stick with what I got. I believe in my list. I'm gonna highlight one of the I think most popular modern bands right now. Imagine Dragons. Your kids could listen to them. Any adult could listen to it. They just keep putting out hits. I think in terms of a band that is relevant and keeps putting out an array of just songs that get used in a lot of different settings, whether it's backdrop for sports or movies, whatnot, radio hits. They just keep producing music at a really high level. I think it's a pretty impressive thing. Listen to some interviews with Dan Reynolds. Pretty cool culture to their band, and I think it's just impressive of how much quality music they continue to produce in the modern era, where I think you could argue that the music that's produced nowadays is very different, and just it's more drum beats and techno-y EDM type stuff, less artistry of just being able to play an instrument nowadays. And so I think Imagine Dragons is a pretty special group in our era, and my kids love it. So there you go.
A comment about the drums beat made you sound a little bit old, but I agree with you.
But an old man.
Go down the rest of your list. Who are your other 4?
Other 4, like I said, stuck with bands: Death Cab for Cutie, The Beatles, Blink-182, and last but not least, AC/DC.
AC/DC is underrated, man.
Very underrated, yeah.
I couldn't believe how good they were. I listened to the album in the last year. I couldn't believe it, how good they were.
So classic.
All right, C. Smith, it's your time.
Yeah, so my 5, in no particular order, because I can't do it, is Fun, The Postal Service, Jack Johnson, Jason Mraz, and also from The Beatles, who I love. I go through phases with The Beatles. Like, I just go all in at certain times, and I leave them for a while and come back. We've talked about the Postal Service on this podcast, so I'm not going to do it. I would love to talk about Fun, which stemmed from a band called The Format, which is incredible. But they haven't been in existence for a while now either. So I'm going to talk about Jack Johnson. I don't know if you guys know Jack Johnson or listen to him much, but I was introduced to him in high school. And he's this indie music, but like this sort of like islandy version of it. And his music is just so relatable. It kind of puts you in a good mood, a little bit slower tempo. But I went through this phase, like when I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, but I would always listen to like Jack Johnson before games. A lot of people listen to pump up music. Like I would go with that type of music to really get in the zone. That's the music I play, like any of these bands, when I'm working and really need to lock in. That's just my go-to, is sort of like indie acoustic music. And shout out Jack Johnson. I've seen him in concert once at Alpine Valley. back in college. Incredible show. And I would love to see him again, but he tours like all over the world, so he doesn't really get to Wisconsin as much anymore. So Jack Johnson, he's pretty awesome.
My friend met him at his bookstore that he works at, and he gave him VIP seats to his concert in Denver. That guy asked me to go, and I could not go that night. But if I had been able to, I would have 100% went. That would have been so sick.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, the other thing I want to point out about him is like he's still making music, but he hasn't like all his music always sounds the same. Like he's like some bands like sell out, and you're like, this album's not very good. Like there really isn't a bad album. So it's just longevity and consistency, which I appreciate.
I'd like to say that I'm the only person here who has a country artist on their list. I don't know if you guys have heard of some of these artists. Maybe you have, maybe haven't.
I have not.
Well, Phil, you should really. I feel like you would really dig Tyler Childers and Sturgill Simpson, who are two of my artists on the list, because they're. I feel like they're country adjacent at this point. They started out as very traditional country artists and have kind of morphed and done a bunch of different style of albums. Sturgill's put out a rock and roll album. Childers is put out like a gospel album. He's kind of, they're both kind of all over the map when it comes to music. But the other three artists on my list, Turnpike Troubadours, very traditional country band from Oklahoma. And then two classics, Weezer and Linkin Park. And I think for this podcast, I really need to focus on Weezer. Slim and I connected over Weezer quite a bit back in the college days. They were one of the first bands that I really got into when I started to kind of dive into music between my freshman and sophomore year of college. And I really started to develop some actual like bands that I liked. And I kind of went, the 90s alternative music route. And Weezer was the one that stood out for me. And at the time, they had the Red Album out. Shout out the Red Album with some really good ones. Pork and Beans, Greatest Man That Ever Lived, Dreamin'. I've only seen them once in concert. I've seen all five of these bands in concert and artists in concert, but Weezer I've only seen once, and they're still making music, and I would definitely like to go back and see them in concert because I imagine that it would still be a good time. They'll play a bunch of the hits.
Did you see Weezer in Las Vegas, Chris?
I did. I've actually seen them 3 times. They were just in Madison last year, which was pretty cool.
I've never seen them. It sounds like such a fun concert.
Good time, good vibes.
I can't believe you remember that I saw them in Vegas. That was like 10 years ago. Nice work.
I know. I don't know why I remember that, but
I saw them at the rave, and Jack's Mannequin opened.
Nice. That's quality. That is quality.
2000 in 2000s indie alt band.
That's perfect.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what's cool about these lists is that like only the Beatles are shared. Otherwise, we all have all different artists. And so yeah, my top 5 are Phish, Radiohead, Of Montreal, which is just like a college obsession almost. Justice and Arcade Fire. The one I have not seen live is Arcade Fire. I was gonna see him for $40 back in like 2010, and then the Suburbs came out. And then I was going to see them for $30. So then the Suburbs came out. That's where they got huge. And I think tickets went up to $80, which at that point was a lot of money. And that was a lot of money for a show, even back then. So like, I just never saw them. And I think they're at Red Rocks this year, but it's like to get tickets is like $150. I mean, it's insane. I want to just highlight Phish, which is a jam band. Very popular jam band, even though if they're not mainstream. You need to go listen to what Drew Carey said about watching Phish at the Sphere in Vegas. The Sphere is like this new concert hall that's like LED all across the it looks like a globe on the outside, and it's like all LED on the outside, and then inside you have the seats, but the LED lights go all the way up. So it's like a pretty spectacular venue. But Phish did 4 shows there that were really specialized. They're just so fun to see live because it's almost like you're in the crowd. You're kind of like one unit all together, listening and like responding to the band. And I can't describe that other than like you going, because everybody that goes kind of knows the things to say or shout as they're playing. Because it's kind of silly. It's like really kid friendly, like Imagine Dragons, like Brian talked about. So go listen to what Drew Carey said about him. It's super, tons of expletives, but super funny. But he like really enjoyed the show at the Sphere. And I feel like they're actually becoming not more mainstream, but like people are like kind of discovering them for the first time. And people that are even into jam bands are kind of discovering for the first time. They just put out a Tiny Desk concert through NPR a couple months ago. So check them out. They're my favorite band. And interesting to listen to. And if you're not in jam bands, I get it. But it's fun even if you weren't into it. Honestly, it's pretty fun even. All right, guys. That was good. Chris, thank you for bringing back the top 5. This has changed our show.
I like it.
It was top 5, and then Matty G came. We united us all. It's just been good.
The constant is constant.
The constant is constant. Follow us on Twitter or the X. Chris, what is our tag?
I believe it's @ManManSportsFan.
Please follow us on the X. Please give us comments or questions. Chris, where are we posting this? The show.
Spotify.
Okay. Post it on Spotify. Are you putting it on Facebook? Insta? All the works?
No, just all the links go to Spotify.
Okay. But we're not posting those any place.
I don't know.
Me and you.
Right.
The team here.
We're just blasting it out on our own stuff.
Okay. We're going to blast it out. Please listen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. We will see you guys next week. Go Pack Go. Me and Chris versus Fremen Guards. I hope Fremen Guards win. Because then the Packers would have won. And that would be awesome. Thanks, guys.
And go Sears. Go Sears.
Nobody's rooting.
All right. Later, dudes.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.